Hi everyone, this is Anne Cullen joining you for another Top Tip Tuesday. So I won't delve into things too quickly. We'll let some of our people come on here. I do have a couple of questions, and so that's very helpful. But I'll just give a minute for some people to join. I've got a bit of a kind of a not a joke necessarily, but oh, I've got this on the wrong thing here. I'm going to write in my title for today, and that is Baby Sleep Expert. That's what we're talking about today. Um, why is it not working? I'm having technical difficulties today. Well, that's okay. Hey everyone, I'm Anne Cullen. Um, Thanks for joining me today. Talking about baby sleep. Um, it seems to be an incredibly popular topic, so maybe we'll do this topic a lot. But um, babies and sleep. So I really talk mostly about the first year, but we can also talk beyond that if some of you come on with questions beyond the first year. But I'm going to start off by talking about Haley's question here. Don't think she's on at the minute. So her question is about when can her baby learn to self-settle, and that's kind of carrying on from last week a little bit when I talked about self-settling. So Haley has a toddler and a 10-week-old baby. So um, sometimes when we talk about 10-week-old babies, when it's the first child, we could talk about it slightly differently. Obviously, a 10-week-old baby's needs are the same, whether there's a toddler in the house or not. But obviously, our ways of dealing with things can be slightly different. And another thing that happens when you have more than one child is you you actually you're used to things being kind of the same. Um, however your first child was, and then you have another child, and sometimes, certainly my case was like this, where what you get the second time around or third time around or whatever is totally different. So it can really throw you off. So she's wondering, she's got the 10-week-old baby sleeping in a carrier and sleeping on her a bit during the day. But she's really wanting to get baby more into the bassinet and stuff um, for some sleeps, which I think a lot of us can relate to. So let me just start by saying what I tend to always say, which is every baby is different, right? So we all know this, but we kind of forget it. And even a lot of experts or professionals tend to want to put all babies in the same categories and say all babies can do such and such by such and such an age, right? So, Haley, first of all, I can't really answer your question about when your baby will be able to self settle. It literally could be next week or it could be 2 years from now. So, your baby is so unique. I can't really answer the when. But what I will say is that a 10-week-old baby still really requires your assistance for basically every single thing that it needs to do, other than bodily functions like burping and what comes out in the nappy, of course. But so the idea of self-settling really is based on the fact that a baby should not really be able to, at 10 weeks old, self-regulate. So your baby still requires you in the first year of life to help it control its um, and keep itself settled, keep itself calm. They don't have the ability to actually calm themselves down. So if you do put a baby down and it's crying and it's just left there, then eventually it will stop crying. And for some people, that can be, I mean, an hour and a half. Babies can cry and cry and cry, and people are adamant that they're not going to go and pick that baby up because they need to teach it something, right? And I know, Haley, that that's not the kind of thing that you're considering, but I just want to reinforce the idea that if your baby is asking to be held, and you're not holding it, you're still not meeting its need in that moment. So it's really important, if your baby is signaling to you, however that is, that it wants to be held, and you know that if you just pick your baby up and comfort it, that it will be fine, then that's what you really need to do as much as possible. So a lot of gentle self-settling techniques with little babies under 6 months really are sending the message that, quite frankly, I'm not that concerned about what you need right now. I know you want mommy to pick you up, or dad, or whoever it might be, but you need to be in your bassinet or in your cot, and I'm only going to pet you. And a lot of people talk about don't make eye contact, don't talk to the baby, don't offer it that kind of comfort, because you're encouraging this wakeful behavior, and they're just going to learn that you're going to help them settle off to sleep. Well, that's exactly what your baby should be learning. What your baby should be learning in the first year of life is that you are there to meet its needs. So I kind of touched on this in the Top Tip Tuesday last week. So when we're going through these self-settling sort of techniques, really what we're trying to do is push our baby beyond a point what they're ready for. So now, by all means, if you're 10, 11, 14-week-old baby, 20-week-old baby, whatever it might be, can quite happily be put down in the cot and literally falls off to sleep without a gristle or a care in the world. I'm certainly not suggesting that you don't allow it to do that, because we all have different needs. And again, all babies are different, so that's great. But if your baby is one who that just doesn't work for, by all means, give it a try for about 5 minutes. If it doesn't work, and I'm not talking about letting it cry, I just mean if you lay your baby down in its bassinet and it seems quite sleepy and you drift off to sleep, 5 minutes later, great. But what a lot of people do is think, oh, I'll just leave him there a little bit longer, I'll just leave him there a little bit longer, just leave him there a little bit longer and see what happens. And then the baby starts to grizzle and move around and gets itself more worked up and finally into a cry. And then we think, okay, fine, I'll pick you up. Right? And honestly, it doesn't matter what age. If you're not responding quite quickly, it can escalate to a point where then you're just having to work to calm your child down. And of course, this is different for every baby. I've only had 2 children, and I've got such a different experience with how quickly one of them can settle down, and the other one takes a bit longer. In fact, quite a lot longer. And you know what? At 12 and 9, they're still that way. So it's recognizing and really instinctually knowing what's best for your baby and how much your baby can handle, how much touch your baby needs, how quickly your baby needs to have you respond. So Haley, just to kind of finish up about this, is just some of the best things you can do are really try and structure your life around the very, very intense needs that your children have right now. The more we pressure ourselves to change our baby, and the more we pressure our baby, we start to oftentimes build up quite a resentment. And when we're trying to push the next stage of development onto our child, we don't necessarily push walking and things like that. We just let them naturally occur. But in our culture, we really, really, really want to push our children beyond where they're ready around sleep. And it is understandable because we're tired. So what I often encourage parents to do is, if you're a parent who really wants to respond to your children, meet their needs to the best of your ability, 24/7, all around the clock, and their sleep needs are really exhausting you, I really encourage you to look around at how you can change your day-to-day schedule so that you can get rest. And if that means having a nap when your toddler is sleeping, sleeping when your baby is sleeping, getting a cleaner in if you've got a little extra money, getting a cleaner in once a week, ordering your food online so you don't have to go to the supermarket, just letting the house be a bit messier for a while because this period doesn't last forever. So really looking at what you can do. And Haley's also talking about dad putting baby to bed. And, again, if it's really easy and natural for babies to often fall asleep on dads when mum is not around, but our babies are so clever that when mum is there, sometimes they only want mum and they really won't stand for anything else. So again, it's really, really individual. We can't give you a day when your baby is going to quite happily go back to sleep with dad. And for every baby, that's different. I would suggest that looking at how dad can interact and work more with the toddler so that you can develop that secure relationship with the baby is really the most important, and it's really the most essential time in your new baby's life for it to be just part of the dyad with you and letting dad practice. But honestly, it is amazing how many times I've heard stories, and I've experienced it myself, where mum is completely out of the picture and out of the house, and somebody else, whether it's dad or someone else, gets baby to sleep, and then mum's left going, oh, but baby always needs to breastfeed to sleep, and why won't they? Well, because they know that it's not you, and so they will often find a way. So again, just not pressuring yourself or pressuring baby to move beyond its where it's ready to move. I also have another question in here, and this is about an 8-month-old. So if anyone else is coming on, please leave your questions. Hopefully I'll be able to see them. But if you've got some questions about babies and sleep, please leave them here. But I will answer another one that I've got here about an 8-month-old who mum believes is teething and is struggling to sleep. And this is a baby. This is such a common scenario, and it's so hard to deal with. You've had a baby who was sleeping really well. She says 7 to 9 hours at night. Sorry, I'm just going to grab a drink. And now baby's waking every couple of hours. And so she's tried leaving him kind of grizzling, and but eventually he works up into crying. And so she's happy to breastfeed about every 4 hours, but in between she's just kind of rocking him and getting him back to sleep. Pamol and Nurofen don't seem to be helping for pain relief, and she's really wondering, how can I stretch out these sleeps, which is totally understandable because we're talking about an 8-month-old. You would hope that you're getting better sleep. Unfortunately, the reality is this happens a lot, and it's not. It's very, very likely part of it is teething and part of it is pain. And we actually know that Pamol and Nurofen and pain relief like that doesn't really work that well in babies. What actually works really well for pain relief with babies is comforting skin to skin with mothers and breastfeeding. So sucking is part of that pain relief, but it's also properties actually in your breast milk that are pain relieving. So one thing I would say is, if this is related to discomfort from teething, which it could be, but we don't know, we're just playing guessing games because baby can't actually tell us, actually breastfeeding your baby more often rather than putting it off will help. So he's then getting that sucking, and even if you're giving a pacifier or a dummy, the properties in the breast milk and that closeness and comfort with you is going to be much more pain relieving than just sucking on a dummy or sucking on his thumb or anything like that, which you haven't actually said if you're doing that. The other thing is just that the more you put off what the baby needs, and this is for all of you, the more you put off what your baby needs, the harder it is to turn it down. So I kind of describe it like turning down a dial. So our sympathetic nervous system turns up when we're in an uncomfortable situation or even a scary situation. So that's turning your dial up, right? Turning it down is when your parasympathetic nervous system is engaged, and that's our rest and digest. That's when we're feeling calm and relaxed. There's no way that your baby or child can sleep if their dial starts to get turned up. So when we're leaving our babies to grizzle, we're just turning that dial up. And for some, like my little boy Jake, his dial turned up really fast, really, really fast. So I went to him immediately. Other babies that, their gauges are a little bit different. So you know your baby. If your baby's one that goes straight into crying, that's a little bit different than the baby that takes a bit longer, but we're often more patient than we should be. And when we get told, oh, well, it's okay to just leave them and see if they go back to sleep. But you know your baby. If your baby's not going to go back to sleep because you've tried it a couple of times and it hasn't happened, then I would suggest responding very, very quickly. Okay, so that's the first thing. Respond very, very quickly. Don't put off those feeds for 4 hours. It's very likely that your baby's even hungry. So don't be thinking you're setting up habits that you're actually meeting needs. So you're meeting needs for closeness, comfort, sucking, pain relief, food, thirst. Okay, there's so many needs an 8-month-old can have during the night. So let's move a little bit beyond the teething, because this question was about teething, but it's pretty normal for 8-month-olds to wake up whether it's teething pain or not, and that's because they're having massive leaps in brain development. I mean, really, this is happening the whole first couple of years of their lives, but this is a time when they're also going to start recognizing when mom leaves the room, I don't know where she is, and I need her, and it's freaking me out a little bit. So that's kind of another part of it. It's a different stage of brain development, so it might not just be pain. So if we're, this is another thing I talk about, is if we're kind of always looking through this lens at a problem, and it's often about pain. It can be, oh, my baby has reflux, I know they're in pain. My baby needs winding, I know they're in pain. And my baby is teething, I know they're in pain. And then we kind of forget to look at the bigger picture, because maybe there's a different solution. So the other thing I would say is this particular mother hasn't said where baby's sleeping. So at 8 months old, on some levels, it is very, very safe for babies to sleep in their own room, in a cot. The incidence of things happening to a baby of that age sleeping in a separate room is very, very low. So it's quite a safe process in that regard. However, as far as the mental well-being of your baby and your mental well-being, it's better for us to keep our babies who are wakeful during the night closer to us. It's protective and it's comforting, and it grows great brains. It's just good all around. And not only that, but it's protective of our sleep. So it's very safe to bed share with an 8-month-old baby. I'm really, really happy to talk to people if you're concerned about how to bed share safely. It's also a great idea if you can find a way to have your baby sleeping back in your room with you at night. It's extremely disruptive of mother's sleep to be getting out of bed. So as soon as your feet hit the floor, you're waking yourself up even more. So again, I see a couple people here. If you've got other questions, please feel free. I've just had a couple of questions, so I'm going over those, but feel free to say hello and leave your questions. Otherwise, thanks for joining in and listening. I'll be on about 10 more minutes, so if you've got questions about babies and sleep, please type them in. That would be great. So just a little bit more about proximity. So a lot of us, and I mean, we're all different about what we think we can cope with as far as night waking and stuff. So when your baby is close to you, if you have a child of any age who's waking frequently in the night and needs lots of comfort in the night, I often suggest that it's easier to change the proximity of where you're sleeping at night rather than to try to change how frequently the baby's waking. Okay, we don't have any control over how much baby is waking at night. Honestly, I can tell you, hold up your hand right now and you could all do it. But if I tell you to go to sleep, you literally can't. It's an automatic function in your body that needs to be brought on by lots of factors. And for a baby that is having a full belly, oftentimes sucking, being comforted and close to mom, right? So keeping that dial turned down, like I was talking about. So um, if you're concerned about night waking and really feel like there's something wrong, I'm really, really happy to meet with you, any of you individually, and really make sure that the feeding is going well and that there's nothing wrong. It's always great to go into the doctor and have them look in ears and do all that kind of thing. But really, we need to understand that night waking and babies and children needing us to help them fall asleep and fall back asleep during the night is a perfectly normal human behavior. Okay, and we don't want it to be. Most of us just want to put our child or baby down and have them sleep and not be woken up. So knowing that it's a very normal behavior and it's not one that you're likely to have much control over unless you literally ignore your baby's needs and don't respond to what they need. But if you're a mum who wants to respond to your baby's needs, then it's very likely that you won't have much control over how much your baby wakes. So finding ways to slow your life down, which is really, really hard, and especially if you're a person that needs to go to work or whatever. We all have different circumstances. Again, I'm really happy to talk to people about different ways of managing what you're doing, what your partner's doing, what's going on with other kids. We can come up with all kinds of great ideas, and it can be as simple as, if you've got the toddler at home and the baby, and you really desperately need to sleep, but your toddler just won't sleep. It's finding little tricks of just laying down on the floor where your toddler quietly plays and, feeding the baby, and you can kind of shut your eyes and you're not going to fall asleep. And, it's finding ways to think outside the square. But if we're always focused on, I must change my baby, I must get them to sleep longer, I must get them to self-settle, I have to make this happen. When we're so focused on that, we kind of forget to think about other options. Okay, so I really encourage you to look at what you can do differently and what the adults in your life can do differently to support you. If I'm one of those people, happy to have you message me. So I'm not getting any more questions coming in. I've seen a few people hopping off and on. I'll give you a couple more minutes and then I'm going to hop off because I feel like I've answered these two questions for today. But please, in the next minute or so, if you've got a question, type it in. See if I've got a few notes I wrote down here. See if I can. I've pretty much covered kind of what I was planning to. Was hoping for a couple more questions, but that's okay if there's none today. Feel free to private message me if you do have a question regarding this. If something that I've said here has triggered something, or you're just thinking none of this makes sense, and certainly there has to be a different way. I'd love to talk to you, possibly in a private consultation. But just message me if you're wondering. If that's necessary. Really, the bottom line is every baby's different and every family's different. And I get really concerned when I hear really blanket statements about how to look after our children. And, other than the fact that they all need to know that they're loved, and there really isn't much else that might be similar about them. They might be so different that it's really hard to put blanket statements onto babies. So the way your baby knows it's loved is that you're reassuring presence. So respond to your babies. If you feel like you're getting yourself really worked up around sleep, if you feel like it's the focus of your day, the focus of your life, you are missing the point of parenthood. And I encourage you to think outside the square and think about what else you can change around you. If you want some help with that, please feel free to contact me. But I really appreciate those of you that have hopped on here today. I'm going to leave it at that. Hope I've answered your question. Please let me know if there's topics you want me to talk about in the Top Tip Tuesday. I'm always here wanting to talk about what you most want to hear about. So thanks for tuning in. This was Anne Cullen. See you later. Bye.